It took me so long to graduate because some of the required courses I needed weren't available. The school didn't have the budget to hire the teachers. And the experience I am getting in the field during my internship is very different from what school actually teaches. That's something a graduating student say inside the advisory meeting that I sat in at a community college interior design here in Southern California. I was in that meeting. I have the data that backs up what was said, and today I am going to walk you through what was said, what the numbers show, and what it means for your design career. Because if you are serious about building a real future in interior design, this conversation is not optional. If we haven't met, I am Wynn. I am an interior designer and construction project manager with over 16 years of real-world experience across residential renovation, kitchen and bath design, restaurant build-outs, and commercial projects. I was recently invited to serve as an industry advisor for the local community college here in Southern California. These advisory committees exist specifically to bridge the gap between academic curriculum and real-world industry needs. Before that advisory meeting, I attended the same school student portfolio showcase. Then 2 weeks later, I attended the committee meeting where I heard exactly what that student experienced. It gave me a perspective I couldn't have gotten any other way. What I am sharing today is not opinion. It's what I observe firsthand, backed by the program's own data. Let me start at the portfolio showcase because this is where the story begins and where that student's work started to make a lot of sense to me. There were 25 students, and the presentation quality was genuinely impressive for a 2-year program. The rendered mood board, 3D visualization, materials boards, all polished, all professionally looking. If you walk through that room without context, you might think these students are ready to step into a design firm tomorrow. But then I started talking to them. I asked about spatial logic, why certain flow decisions were made, what happened when layout construction constraints enter the picture. I asked about the budget. How do you reconcile a design vision with a real number? I asked about working with contractors, reading a set of drawings, and coordinating between trades. And what I heard, or more accurately, what I didn't hear, told me everything. The visual output was there, but the thinking behind the execution was not. Here's the detail that stayed with me the most. Not a single student I spoke with was planning to transfer to a 4-year university. Now, I want to be careful here because I am not someone who believes a 4-year degree is the only legitimate path in this industry. My own career proves otherwise. But here's the issue. If students are opt out of the 4-year career path and the 2 years path isn't equipping them with real-world execution skills, what exactly are they being prepared for? That question was already sitting in my mind when I walked into the advisory meeting. And then I heard that student's quote, and the question got a lot more concrete. Because what she described, courses not being available, the program falling behind, isn't an isolated complaint. It's reflected directly in the data. The advisory meeting includes actual program performance data, the kind institution rarely publicized. And 2 numbers stood out to me immediately. First is the credential completion rate. The program's own performance benchmark, the number they set as their internal standard, is roughly 90% of enrolled students should successfully earn a credential. The actual rate, 58%. That means out of every 10 students who enroll in this program, 4 of them will invest their time, pay their fees, show up to class, and never finish. Let that land for a second. That is not a rounding error. That is a system failure. And it's exactly the kind of outcome you expected when students can't get into the courses they need to graduate on time, which is precisely what that student say at the advisory meeting. To be fair, the college knows this. It's in their own documentation. They're working on it. But here's the reality of how curriculum change works inside an accredited institution. Committees, approval cycles, budget allocation, and administrative review. We're talking about years before anything meaningfully changes inside a classroom, years that students don't have. The second number is time and outcome. The full professional level certificate for this program requires 3 years of coursework, 78 to 80 units, roughly. 3 years of your life, 3 years of tuition, 3 years of opportunity, cost, and the stated outcome. I'm quoting directly from the program catalog. Entry-level employment as a professional interior designer, 3 years, entry-level. I'm not saying the education is worthless. I'm saying that if you're deciding how to invest your time, your money, and your energy, you deserve to know exactly what you're buying, because that's 58% completion rate, a 3-year runway for an entry level and graduating student saying she still had to scramble for required courses. That tells a very specific story about how the system is working for students right now. Here is where this gets real. The advisory committee for the program include working interior designers, corporate design professionals, and industry educators from other institutions. These are not theorists. These are people who operate in the field, who review designer portfolios and make hiring decisions. And the feedback they gave the program consistently across multiple people came down to the same core message. The curriculum needs more construction knowledge, more training on how to read shop drawings, more depth on construction detailing, hardware specification, and the technical language of the field. More preparation for what happens when a design leaves a drawing board and enter a job site. One committee member stated directly that there is a clear and unmet need in the industry for designers who can read shop drawings and communicate effectively with the construction size of the project. The committee formally recommend on the record that the program finds ways to infuse construction terminology and real-world execution skills into existing coursework. I want you to understand what that means. The industry professionals who were brought in to evaluate this program, the people who hire graduates, sat in a committee meeting and told the college that the curriculum is missing the exact skills that make a designer effective and employable in the real world. Now, I want to add one more layer to this because there is a factor accelerating everything I just described, and it's make the problem harder to spot, not easier, and that is AI technology. Today, a student can open an AI image to type a few simple prompts and produce a photorealistic interior rendering in under 60 seconds, full mood boards in minutes, presentation visuals that look indistinguishable from the work of a seasoned designer. And here's the issue. When the production of a beautiful image no longer requires design thinking, you can graduate looking like a designer without having developed the cognitive foundation of one. The portfolio may look polished, The spatial logic behind it may be completely underdeveloped in a classroom, or a portfolio showcase that distinction is almost impossible to detect, but in the field, it shows up immediately. It shows up on day one of an internship, which is probably part of why that students felt the gap so sharply. Because here's what AI cannot do. AI cannot walk a job site and catch a clearance problem before it becomes a $30,000 mistake that require a change order. It cannot read a set of structural drawings and identify the implications for a kitchen layout. It cannot negotiate a scope change with a contractor when the project has a problem at roof framing. It cannot coordinate between the plumber, the cabinet fabricator when schedule collapse and everyone is pointing at each other's. Those judgment calls feel intelligent leadership under pressure, and those skills come from training real applied construction literate training, not from generating images. So you got two things compounding each other. A curriculum that the industry itself says is missing construction knowledge, and a generation of tools that can mask whether that knowledge was ever developed in the first place, right up until a student steps onto a real job site. Let me give you a framework I use to think about this because it clarifies exactly where the gap lives and exactly what that student meant when she said working in the field was very different from what school teaches, because real design competency in modern era requires a deliberate strategy of skills stacking, and it exists at three distinct levels. The first level is aesthetic intelligence, the ability to create spaces that are visually coherent, emotionally resonant, and well composed. The traditional program teach this reasonably well, and AI tools are now automating it further. This layer is not the problem. The second level is system thinking, which is exactly where my 80-20 rule comes into play. It is understanding that 80% of a successful project is planning behind the scenes, planning before anyone ever walk into a job site, while only 20% is the execution, which is construction. Knowing how construction, budget, schedule, human behavior interact, a tile choice affects installation, labor costs, a layout change ripples into plumbing, rough-ins, a material substitution changes the lead time. This planning layer is largely absent from traditional design curriculum. And it is what separates designers who can only concept from the designers who can truly execute. The third level is field fluency, the ability to speak and communicate fluently in exact language of the construction world. This means reading shop drawings, understanding technical specification, knowing what contractor needs from you to turn your vision into a built reality, and knowing how to ask the right questions during a site visit. This is about being someone the trades respect and work with, not work around. This field competency is almost entirely absent from traditional design education, and is exactly what the advisory committee say the industry is missing. I built my framework specifically to fill that exact gap, not to replace design education and not to compete with AI, but to give you the exact layers that neither traditional school nor AI tools can provide. The construction literacy, field intelligence, and planning framework that the industry is actively crying out for. So whether you're a student in a 2-year program who wants more than just standard curriculum offers, an aspiring professional about to walk into an internship, or decorators who concept beautifully but struggles when a project moves into the field, I've created a path for you. So if you're ready to bridge that gap, the link is below in the description box, and join my community on Renovation Planning Studio.